Do you struggle to make the text on your social media posts stand out from the background? Do you want to convey your information clearly to your target audience without having to sacrifice the nice design elements that you want to include? Well, in this video, I'm going to go through 4 of my favorite ways to include text in social media posts using Canva. Hi, I'm Dan Maloney, founder of AudioSolve, where I help small businesses, charities, not-for-profits, community organisations, entrepreneurs, and anyone really who's struggling with their comms and content to really get on top of their game and reach their target audience. In this video, I'm going to go through my favourite ways of including text in social media posts where you're trying to convey some information clearly to your target audience, but you also want the design to look professional, dynamic, and you don't want to have to sacrifice having images. There are absolutely ways to do this, and the principles are pretty much universal across graphic design, not just for social media posts. So these are hopefully methods that once I've showed you them here, you'll be able to use not just on social media, but in designing your website, or if you're using print media, anything like that, these principles should apply. I'm going to go through from the most simple methods that I like to use through to a more complex method that I sometimes use, and I'm just using Canva. What I would recommend is, if you don't currently have a Canva account, sign up to get one. It is free, and there's loads of tools that you can use in the free version that will absolutely do a job for you in terms of helping you to create great content. I would say it's absolutely worth paying for Canva Pro. It's not very much, depends where you live on how much it costs, but I think I pay about £10 in the UK per month for it. And I honestly think that I couldn't live without it now from a graphic design perspective. So if you can, sign up. If not, lots of these things that I go through will be absolutely doable using the free version. So let's jump in, and I'll take you through some great ways to include text in social media posts using Canva. Okay, so for the purposes of this video, I have created a make-believe charity called Better Life, and I am trying to create a social media post advertising an upcoming charity coffee morning. So I've got my nice picture of these 2 lovely ladies, and I've got my text with the important information that I'm trying to get across to my target audience. And as you can see, there's a whole load of issues with the way that the text sort of starts to fade into the background of the picture. So there's a load of stuff that we can do. The main thing that we're trying to achieve here is contrast between the background and the foreground, so the background image and the foreground text, without sacrificing the elements that we want to have involved here. So this is the most simple version of what I'm trying to achieve that I'm going to go through here. So to start with, what I really want to do is darken the background. So what I'm going to do is go to backgrounds here, and I'm going to select a relatively dark color. I've got a dark color here. Let's just go for a dark gray. Doesn't really matter what it is necessarily. So that's a background that I've created there. And as you can see, it doesn't change what's happening in this image. But what I'm going to do here with this image, so I've clicked on this image of the 2 lovely ladies, and I'm going to go to transparency. I'm just going to take it down to maybe about 60%. And what I'm actually thinking, looking at this, is I'd like the background to be a slightly darker color, something that gives it a bit more contrast. So you can see there, I've gone to something a bit greeny, and all of a sudden this text just pops out of the image. Now what I can do on top of that to make it look nice and clear and really make the text stand out is I'm selecting all of these bits of text that are in front that I really want to emphasize, and I'm going to click on effects here at the top, and I'm going to go to lift, and immediately, if you notice that as soon as I clicked on lift, it popped out. So let's just compare those two. So that's with no effects, and then just lift with a standard 50%. And you can play around with that. You can go to 100% lift and it really pulls the text away from the image in the background, or you could be a bit more subtle. I think kind of around where we started with was absolutely fine there. So then I can play around with the transparency in this image and just see where I like it, maybe take it a bit darker. So this is a really simple version of what I'm trying to achieve. So there, basically where we're at is we can see the background image, we can see these two ladies, we can see that they're sitting over a tea, and also the text in front is very clear. I can easily read what it is that I'm trying to get across to the target audience. So, job done. Moving on to my next example, and perhaps ever so slightly up in the complexity scale, although this is also a very simple option. What I've done here is I've just moved the image up and tried to separate out the text onto a different colored background. It's much clearer like this, but I think it's a bit of a blunt instrument, doesn't look like a particularly sort of professional approach. All I've got here, just by the way, is just gone to elements and shapes and just pick the first shape, which is a square, and then drag it out to the size that I want it. Obviously I've already got one there, so I'll delete that. And then I just plonk it over the text at the bottom. So what I would potentially do in this example is try and create a little bit more of an interesting dynamic between the image and the separated section at the bottom. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just add an angle to this text section, and as you can see, that creates a load of white space, so I need to make this bigger, and also at that end. So I've got this whole bottom end covered, and what I'm going to do to make things interesting, I'm just going to create a bit of an overlap between the text section and the image section, and then I can bring all of these up. There. And then I'm going to use the same trick from the previous example, where I go to my effects and I lift those off, so that starts to help this section that's overlapping the image stand out a bit more. And then I'm going to do the same thing again as the previous example by selecting the same colored background, and then I'm going to click on my image of these two ladies, and I'm just going to make that a bit transparent to darken the image, so you've got that background color coming through. Also helps our logo pop out in that top corner. And there we go. We've got a bit more of an interesting approach to adding text. I'm just going to say at this point, I'm not covering fonts specifically. Obviously, that's another way that you can make text interesting, but I think I might do another video altogether on fonts, because there's obviously a huge offering on Canva in terms of fonts, and it would take a long time to go through. So that's example number 2. Moving on to example number 3. As you can see here, I have shifted all of my text around and shifted it over to the right, so it's all aligned to the right hand side. That's also all aligned with each other there. And rather than having just a big block background to put the text against, an alternative approach to that is to put each of these in their own text block. And that might sound again like a bit of a blunt instrument, but there are again ways that you can help that to look nice and professional. So first things first, let's create some blocks to put them in. So let's have one for the top. And then I'm just gonna duplicate these, line them up nicely. Obviously you want to send them behind the text. These ones can obviously be a bit smaller because they're covering smaller parts of text. Okay. Again. So obviously we want to make these boxes the right color for our brand. So let's use that same color again that we've got in our logo. So here's where we're at the moment. We've created a neat design, but I still think it looks a little bit blunt as a method for making the text stand out. And also we're starting to really cover up the image and the key focus, which is our coffee morning. So what I'm going to do is use this transparency tool again and just drag it back to a point where we're still showing some of that image through, but we are not messing with the integrity of the text. If I want to make really sure, again, I would go and use that lift effect, and that all stands out nicely now. So that's an effect that I really like to use. It looks clear. It allows you to use your brand colors effectively across an image, and it gets the job done. Obviously, once again, I can also, if I want to make it stand out even more, I can do my background trick again. So let's go the same background. We've got that selected now. Click on the picture of our two ladies, and then we can just slightly scale this back, and all of a sudden we have a lovely looking social media post that gets across our information nicely. And for the final example, we're going to try and do something a little bit more complicated. It takes a little bit more time, but it's one of my favorite ones to do if I want to try and create a nice sort of smooth fade from this text area into an image without this rather harsh straight line across the middle. What I'm going to try and do is create a gradient from this color through to transparent, And so we'll have a nice sort of merging effect between the image and the text area. So first thing to do here is to start creating the gradient. I'm going to go to elements and I'm going to search fade to transparent gradient. There we go, I've searched it before. Let's go to see all, and I tend to use this one here, which is available on the free version of Canva, and obviously, as you can see, there are plenty of other versions available on Canva Pro. So let's see what we can do with this version for free. So now that I've got it in my image, I'm going to spin it around 90 degrees so that the gradient's going in the right direction. I obviously want the color at the bottom, and I'm going to make it full size so it's the right width. It's going to cover the entire image at the moment, and let's change it to the right color. So what we're going to do here is we're going to duplicate that gradient multiple times. So I want 4 of these probably. So 1, I'm going to put that just ever so slightly above. 2, and that one's already predicted what I want to do with it, so it's gone slightly above there. And 3, and that's done the same thing. And so what I can then do is go to my position up here. Where did that go? Position and layers. And obviously I want them all together. So this is my bottom one, and I want that bottom there. Oh, it's gone again. So I want to select all of these, and I'm going to group them together. And that makes it easier for me to move them around in terms of layers, but also keeps them all nice and locked together. If I do want to move them, I don't lose one of them or get them in the wrong order. So the next stage is moving it into the position that you want it. So what we want to do is put it behind all of the text, but in front of our green rectangle that our text is on. So here I can just drag it down to this point. And that is the simple version of what we're going for, but we're going to keep playing around with it until we get it how we want it. So I think the gradient is a little bit too dark in one of the important areas of the picture, which is where this pouring of tea is going on. So what I'm going to do is just drag it a little bit down so that we reveal a bit more of this image. But what you'll see starting to happen here is that you can start to see the line of the rectangle just above the text, which I really don't want. So I'm going to go onto this box. I'm going to hit the transparency, and I'm going to start to drag that back down. Lovely. So about 60 seems okay. So because I want to be able to move this gradient down a little bit to give this image a little bit more of its own light, what I'm going to do is get my green rectangle, and I can drag this down a little bit because the gradient's doing a lot of the work for me now. And then I can get my gradient, and I can pull that a little bit further down and start to reveal a little bit more of this teapot and teacups. And while I'm here, I just want this text to pop out. So I'm going to use the same effect that I've used previously and lift that off the post. And there you go. So there's lots of other things you can do with this type of approach if you've got a wider social media post or any other type of design that you're looking to do. It's often really nice to blend across from left to right or vice versa. And I think something like this always looks a little bit more designy. So I can keep playing around with this, to be honest, forever. And I may think about kind of pulling this rectangle even further down, and then I can pull the gradient further down. Yeah, that looks nice. So I'm really blending nicely across this coffee table. That's what I want to really achieve. So I'm really happy with that. I've got 4 options there. So I've got my most basic at the top, which is just literally making your background darker, making your text lift off the screen a little bit, and really just getting the information across in a clear and simple way. If I want to introduce a bit more color into the image, I can use this angled version of the social media post. Again, this is a similar way of doing the same thing, where I'm just giving each bit of information its own space within the post. And then finally, I've got this version, which is probably my favorite. It takes a little bit more time and playing around to get the elements into position, but I think it comes off looking like you really know what you're doing in terms of design and content creation. So I hope you found those examples and demonstrations useful. I think you should use those as a starting point and go away, play around with what I've just showed you, and really develop it to work with your organization, your branding, and really fitting in with how you want your social media presence to look to your target audience. I hope that the principle that you'll take away from this is that you absolutely don't have to sacrifice the nice design elements that you want to include in social media posts just so that you can have text there as well. It's all just about using those methods of creating a contrast between the background and the text that's in the foreground that you really want to get across to your target audience. So if you found that useful, leave a comment below. If there's any other design or content or comms things that you want me to cover in future videos, also leave a comment. I'll be more than happy to do that. And if you could like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, that'd be absolutely amazing. But for now, I'll see you in the next video for more comms related content.